Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're diving into a real medical mystery, a clinical trial where the biggest clue, the smoking gun, was finding, well, no difference at all. Sounds weird, right? Let's get into it.
Okay, so every good mystery needs a villain, right? And in our story, the bad guy is a really nasty condition called septic shock.
So what is septic shock? Well, think of your immune system as this perfectly trained army, right? Its job is to fight off infections. But with septic shock, that army just goes haywire. It overreacts, and its response gets so extreme that it actually starts attacking the very body it's supposed to be protecting. It's an incredibly dangerous situation where your own defenses turn against you.
So the big question is, how do you fight back when the body's own army has gone rogue? Well, for years, the standard game plan has been to kind of manage the chaos from a bird's eye view. This traditional method is called standard care, and it really just focuses on one big system-wide number, something called the mean arterial pressure, or MAP for short. The logic is pretty straightforward. If we can just keep the overall blood pressure high enough, then in theory, blood should get to all the important places. The brain, the kidneys, all those vital organs. But you know how science works. A new idea started bubbling up. People began to wonder, what if there's a better way, a more direct way to see what's actually happening on the front lines of this internal war? And that new strategy is called Targeted Tissue Perfusion, or TTP. Now, perfusion is just a fancy medical word for how well blood is flowing through your tissues. So instead of just looking at that one big blood pressure number for the whole system, the TTP strategy gets, well, more granular. It checks for direct signs of blood flow in the tiniest blood vessels. It's kind of like checking the side streets and cul-de-sacs instead of just watching the freeway. We're talking about simple things like checking how fast the color returns to your skin when you press it. This gives doctors a real-time peek at whether blood is truly getting down to the nitty-gritty level where it's needed most. So you see the difference, right? It's really all about perspective. Standard care is that big picture, top-down view. TTP, on the other hand, is a bottom-up, boots-on-the-ground micro view. And that led to the multi-million-dollar question. Which one actually works better? Which one saves more lives? And to figure that out, a team of scientific detectives, if you will, set up a major experiment. It was called the TARTARE-2S trial. Now, this wasn't some quick weekend project. No way. This was a massive, long-term investigation. They carefully gathered evidence across 3 different hospitals in Europe for 6 years. They really wanted to make sure they had solid, robust data to work with. So, they recruited 219 patients for the trial. And we have to remember, these were people in a truly critical, life-threatening situation. These patients were then randomly put into one of 2 groups. One got the old standard care, and the other got the new TTP strategy. All of this was to answer that one crucial question: which approach gives them a better shot? And this whole process, the careful steps, the random assignment, that's the gold standard for how you run a medical trial. Randomizing the patients is absolutely key. Why? Because it helps make sure that any difference you see in the results is actually because of the treatment and not some other random factor. It creates a really fair apples-to-apples comparison. Okay, so after all those years of work, the evidence was finally in. The results were ready. And just like in any great detective story, there was a twist. The whole case really boiled down to one thing: which group of patients got better faster? The main way they measured this was by counting the number of days a patient was alive and off the powerful drugs called vasopressors that are used to keep their blood pressure up. And here it is, the big surprise. After everything, there was almost no difference. None. The group that got the new TTP strategy spent about 23 days off those support drugs. The standard care group, 22 days. In the world of statistics, that's a flat-out tie. The new, promising, targeted strategy was no better than the old one. And if you look at the official conclusion from the trial report, it says exactly that. It confirms what we just saw. This new, more complicated approach, it just didn't work any better. But here's where it gets really interesting. The verdict also showed something else super important. If you look at the mortality rates, they were pretty much the same, and there were no more serious side effects in the new group. Now think about that. This means that even though the TTP strategy allowed for a lower overall blood pressure, it wasn't any more dangerous. And that's a huge piece of the puzzle. So you might be thinking, okay, if the new method wasn't better, was this whole 6-year trial just a giant waste of time?
And the answer is a resounding no. Absolutely not. Let's dig into what this evidence really tells us about the bigger mystery of septic shock. Because this, right here, is where finding no difference turns into a massive clue.
See, in science, it's a lot like being a detective. Ruling out a promising lead isn't a failure. It's progress. It means you can stop wasting your time and energy chasing down the wrong path. So let's break down what we really learned. The trial gave us 3 huge clues. Clue number 1, this more complex TTP strategy, it's not the magic bullet we hoped for. Clue number 2, we now have good evidence that letting a patient's blood pressure be a little lower can actually be safe. That's a big deal. And clue number 3, maybe the most important one, researchers can now confidently cross this whole idea off their list and redirect all that time, money, and brain power toward other, more promising leads in the fight against sepsis.
So no, this result doesn't close the case on septic shock. Not by a long shot. But what it does do is sharpen the investigation. It narrows the field. By proving one promising theory wrong, this trial has made it much more likely that the next door scientists decide to open, well, that one might just hold the key.